out know that they won't, and we flat out understand that we are not going to commit American men and women in uniform in massive numbers, or perhaps in any numbers, to that conflict. Now, the Serbs know this. They have mobile weapons that can easily be moved and do not lend themselves to the kind of targets that are necessary for air power to be effective. My colleagues should remember back just a couple of years to the conflict in Desert Storm and how difficult it was owning the air with all the superiority we had in air superiority. We could not track down those mobile Scuds. We could not find those Scuds. We could not effectively deter those Scud missiles because they were mobile. They are far less mobile than artillery or tanks, and those were located in the flat desert terrain with clear air. The artillery and tanks we're talking about in Bosnia are located in mountainous regions, in caves, undercover, in a situation where the air is not clear 3/4 of the time, when cloud cover obscures those targets, and when they can easily be moved on just a moment's notice. We should stop threatening what we can't deliver because we have not defined a clear-cut case for U.S. intervention. The President has not defined that, and the American people don't understand it. We have not defined what our political objectives will be, and therefore our troops cannot define what their military objective would be if they were deployed to that region. And without a defined objective, we have an open-ended situation which is reminiscent of past situations, and the American public will not support that.
The chair would like to restate the previous order. The previous order was that morning business would go on till 10:30. Senators would be permitted to speak for 5 minutes each. The first 30 minutes would be under the control of the Senator of Wyoming or his designee. That period has expired. And the second 30 minutes would be under the control of the Senator from Massachusetts, Mr. Kennedy, or his designee. There was no one on the floor, so the Senator from Colorado spoke beyond the 5 minutes allotted.
Madam President, I thank you for that instruction, which I wasn't aware of. I wonder if I could ask my friend, the Senator from Massachusetts, for 5 minutes of his time.
The Senator is recognized for an additional 5 minutes.
Madam President, I thank you, and I thank the Senator from Massachusetts for that. We need to understand the reality that the nature of the conflict that exists today in what is formerly Yugoslavia is a conflict that dates back several centuries, that is ethnic, cultural, and religious, and will not easily be resolved. It will not be resolved by outside intervention. There are at least three factions present in that territory. They all hate each other. They all have enmities which go back for centuries. They all want to kill each other. It's simply a matter of who has the weapons and who has the advantage to do that. They have staying power that we need to understand is going to outlast any short-term intervention. And therefore, we are potentially looking at an open-ended involvement, an involvement with no date certain, no timetable, no clear-cut objective. That again reminds us of past conflicts and again tells us that we will not commit American troops to that type of situation. It is almost cruel in a way to the Muslims, as difficult as that situation is, that we hold out the hope to them of U.S. intervention. And we do not know for certain, but it is a distinct possibility that the war and the conflict in Bosnia is being prolonged because the Muslims keep holding out the false hope that the United States, the UN, or NATO will intervene in a way to effectively support their effort. We are not going to do that, and we need to state that. and state that clearly. The President knows that. He must state that. It is difficult to do. I understand that. It is difficult to watch the carnage and to view the situation as it's taking place in Bosnia. And yet we have to be honest and truthful and say that we are not going to intervene in a way that probably will deter that. And in fact, by promising something which we can't deliver and won't deliver, we hold out a false hope to those who perhaps would be more willing to go to the table if they realized for certain that the United States was not going to come to their aid. We need leadership out of the White House. Sometimes leadership means defining for the American people some hard realities and some hard truths. Leadership does not always mean intervention. Sometimes leadership means saying, no, we are not able to accomplish that specific purpose. As I said, there are slaughters going on around the world. Because CNN is not carrying them live, we perhaps are not as engaged or involved or as aware of those conflicts. But we have said in many of those situations, no, for various reasons. We will not commit American troops. We will not commit American prestige. We will not involve ourselves in that situation. What I fear here is that we are squandering the ability of the American leadership, American foreign policy, and American military to intervene when we need to intervene, when our vital interests are involved, when we can define a political objective and a military objective and achieve that objective, and when we can effectively bring that about. I'm afraid by this action, we are signaling that we have no stomach for this at all, even when those vital interests are concerned, and that something will come along down the line, like North Korea, where the American people say, well, we just don't want to enter into another Bosnia, we don't want another Lebanon, we don't want another Somalia, we don't want another Vietnam, and so we won't get involved when we should get involved and when we must get involved. We have squandered a great deal of leadership and prestige, and it's important that the administration define its foreign policy objectives, designate a spokesperson to provide leadership around the world for those foreign policy objectives. Mr. Christopher has fallen off the face of the map. I haven't heard from him in weeks. I don't know what he's involved in. If he speaks for the administration, he's certainly not speaking very loudly or very concisely. It's hard to tell who speaks for this administration, if anyone. I think it's a confused policy. The President needs to get engaged. I know he wants to spend his time on domestic issues. They are important. He should, but he wears two hats. He is commander-in-chief, and he is the leader of the free world, whether he wants to be or not. He must engage and engage directly, define a clear, concise foreign policy, military policy for this country, designate a spokesman, provide the solid leadership that he needs, and go forward. That is our obligation to the world. Sometimes that means saying no. Sometimes that means saying yes. But for goodness sakes, let's stop saying yes and no.
Your 5 minutes is up, Senator.
I thank the Chair.
The senator from Massachusetts controls 25 minutes. Senator of Massachusetts is recognized.
Madam President, I yield myself 5 minutes.
For 5 minutes.
Madam President, later today, after we have completed the action on the bankruptcy bill, the Senate will take up the conference report on the school-to-work opportunities legislation. This important legislation is intended to help ensure that all students, particularly the 75% of young people in this country who do not complete a four-year college program, enter the workforce equipped with the academic and occupational skills that are required in our increasingly competitive economy. This time, I do want to acknowledge the leadership of my friend and colleague, Senator Simon, who has been the force in terms of both of our committee and on the floor in developing the legislation, and also in terms of the debate in the conference committee. And I want to also acknowledge the strong bipartisan support that we have had on this legislation from Senator Durenberger who also has been indispensable in terms of bringing us to where we will be later on in the day. The purpose of this legislation, the School to Work, establishes a nationwide framework for the development and the expansion of programs that integrate academic and practical education by allowing students to combine classroom learning with actual work experience. In my own state, we are experimenting with a number of different programs that provide those kinds of opportunities for young people, and we have seen concrete evidence of the positive impact of a well-designed school-to-work program can have on the lives and communities of the people we serve. I want to share with my colleagues this morning the experiences of 3 young men and women enrolled in innovative programs in different communities in Massachusetts that demonstrate the basic principles of this bill in practice. Tony Dunn is an 18-year-old African-American from Upman's Corner area of Dorchester. She is enrolled in the Project ProTech in Boston, which currently serves 200 students at 4 different high schools in the city. The program provides paid work-based learning opportunities with 14 participating employers at leading hospitals and financial service companies. These employers contribute over $1 million a year in student wages, scholarships, and staff. ProTech is widely considered to be one of the nation's most successful examples of active business involvement in school-to-work programs. Tony is a senior at Brighton High School, graduate this June. She's participated in the ProTech Healthcare for the past 2 years, working in operating rooms of the New England Medical Center. ProTech has provided her first real job, and she has performed well. She works regularly with nurses, scrub technicians, anesthesiologists, and surgeons. Tony was visited by Secretary of Labor Robert Reich last year, and their visit was part of the NBC Brokaw report, The Lost Generation, that aired last July. Tony came into the program knowing she was interested in the medical field but unaware of the different occupations and what steps to take to become certified to do the work. And thanks to ProTech, she has decided to attend the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, where she will pursue a degree in nursing. Tony credits ProTech with her ability to manage her time and balance the demands of school and work. Felice Vasquez is a 19-year-old from Worcester, Massachusetts, who participated in the Career Beginnings program, a nationally recognized school-to-work model program brought to Worcester 4 years ago by the Tom McCann Shoe Company, which is headquartered there. Career Beginnings provide at-risk high school students with an 18-month program in their junior and senior years. The program includes monthly meetings with mentors, private sector, summer jobs, individual counseling, and career advice, and job skill workshops. Nearly 200 students have participated in this program. 54% are minorities. 87% of their parents did not attend college. Before participating in Career Beginnings, Felix was taking classes in electrical trades at the vocational high school, had no thought of going to college. Career Beginnings gave him the first work experience. The program built his skills, taught him how to present himself during an interview, gave him a mentor to build the self-confidence, and with the help of his mentor, he decided to pursue a technical career and give something back to his community. Felix is now a freshman at Worcester State College studying physical therapy. He is the first-generation college student. His family is extremely proud of his achievements. Jose Guadalupe is a 16-year-old participant in the Palante Neighborhood Employment Training Program in north central Massachusetts. Palante is designed to train bilingual youth to be employable as medical translators and provide the academic preparation necessary for participants to enroll in post-secondary education and training programs in the health profession fields. 30 young people from economically disadvantaged backgrounds are currently participating in a wide variety of work experience at hospitals and other facilities affiliated with the Health Alliance in Fitchburg and Leominster. Jose's family moves from Puerto Rico to Fitchburg 3 years ago. He was unable to speak English, was enrolled in the English as a Second Language program at the Fitchburg High School. Today, Jose works with the Palante program, the Physical Rehabilitation Department of Leominster Hospital, where he serves as a bilingual medical interpreter. His work in school has improved, and in less than 1 year has been placed in the regular program of the Fitchburg High School. These 3 stories, I yield myself 2 more minutes.
Without objection.
These 3 stories demonstrate the human face of the school-to-work bill. The country has the best higher education system in the world, but we have underinvested in non-college bound youth. Today's highly competitive international economy, we can't afford to give other nations that kind of advantage. The School to Work Opportunities Act will enable us to do a better job of preparing large numbers of young Americans for productive careers, and in doing so, we will be building a stronger economy for the future. Madam President, I withhold the balance. Time I yield 5 minutes to the senator from Minnesota.
I wonder if the senator would withhold just for one moment for unanimous consent request. I wonder if the senator from Massachusetts would, after yielding that time to the senator from Minnesota. I understand then the senator from Illinois would be yielded 5 minutes. Could then I have unanimous consent that I then be yielded 4 minutes?
Madam President, I make that request.
Without objection. The senator from Minnesota is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam President, I rise to offer my full support for the Conference Committee on the School to Work Opportunities Act that will be voted on later today. The School to Work Opportunities Act provides seed money, technical assistance to states and communities in order to encourage and facilitate locally developed, locally operated, and locally administered school to work transition programs. It builds on existing programs. It removes existing barriers that states, communities, employers, and educators face in teaching job skills. It helps U.S. companies attract skilled workers they need to strive in the increasingly competitive global marketplace. And principally, it brings together employers, educators, government, labor in a true partnership to prepare our nation's young people for the higher skill, higher wage job. I begin by thanking my Republican colleagues, Senator Hatfield, Jeffords, and Bond, who, through their co-sponsorship, helped make this a true bipartisan initiative. Also to commend the distinguished chairman of the Labor Committee, our colleague Senator Kennedy, and my special colleague from Illinois, Senator Simon, for their leadership on this issue, for working with all of us and our staffs through the conference to make sure the input that we received from people in our own communities, especially my people in the state of Minnesota, was incorporated into the final conference agreement. That leads me, Madam President, to a special acknowledgement to the people of Minnesota, to business, labor, education, government leaders, and students, all of whom gave their knowledge, enthusiasm, commitment, and time to help make the School to Work Opportunities Act a much better reality than we had anticipated. Based on recommendations that came from Minnesota, we strengthened provisions of the bill to encourage cooperation and collaboration among all key players, to ensure that state governors bear the ultimate responsibility and accountability for state school-to-work plan. We added language to broaden the definition of school-to-work opportunities in order to make it clear that career exploration and workplace learning programs should begin earlier than high school, that school-to-work opportunities can be linked to part-time employment, to emerging community service learning opportunities, which Minnesotans consider an integral part of education reform. We also added a section of the bill creating a federal clearinghouse in order to encourage replication of successful programs and interstate collaboration in program research, evaluation, and development. And for Minnesota, we also added a section of the bill making it easier for states and communities to waive federal program mandates. So, Madam President, the many Minnesotans who offered their guidance on this bill ought to be very proud with their contributions are now an integral part of the conference report. One of our strongest backers in our state has been the Teamsters and their Teamsters Service Bureau, prime sponsor of a new chartered public school that focuses curriculum on youth apprenticeships. And the Bureau's director, Gene Dunn, called their new high school a real-world learning center. Tom Triplett, president of the Minnesota Business Partnership, another strong supporter of this, says the reason for business support in Minnesota is that Minnesota employers can't find enough qualified people for entry-level positions. He says the legislation will help students develop the skills they need to succeed in today's workplace, especially the forgotten half who aren't going on to college but need good paid jobs. John Mercer, Minnesota's Deputy Commissioner of Education, member of the state's Education and Employment Transition Council, wrote to me to say that the act will help in allowing Minnesota to pursue its goal of developing a high-quality education and employment transition system. During the January recess, I met with two other Minnesota groups. The groups included educators, labor officials, hospital officials, and students in the Twin Cities and the Duluth-Cloquet area who are designing new youth apprenticeship opportunities in different healthcare occupations. Members of this body know of my strong interest in healthcare reform, and I must say that it doesn't take a lot of convincing when you visit with these groups that the fundamental changes that this legislation helps make possible in the way we prepare Americans for work will be critical to our ability to achieve cost savings and flexibility, the kinds of flexible workforce changes that are so desperately needed in our healthcare system. So, Madam President, the School to Work Opportunities Act presents an important step forward in public policy in supporting state, local initiatives that change the way we teach and the way we learn. I hope my colleagues will join me in supporting this important legislation. I thank my colleagues, Senator Simon, Senator Kennedy, my Republican colleagues who supported us as well, and I yield the floor.
Senator from Illinois is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. And I want to thank my colleagues, particularly Senator Kennedy, the chair of the committee, Senator Durenberger, who has been very helpful on this, as well as on other things. The direct lending program we simply wouldn't have today but for Senator Durenberger's help. And also Senator Wofford, who has been very helpful in this whole field. We're talking about higher education here, only it's a different kind of higher education. It's spelled H-I-R-E. 75% of those who go to high school will not end up with a bachelor's degree. And yet we have focused a great deal of attention on that other 25%, not very much on the 75%. This is an attempt to do this with the School to Work program. It does not involve a new federal agency. What we will do will be give seed money to California, to New Hampshire, to other states that need it to get these School to Work programs going. Senator Kennedy and I visited a school in Chicago where young people, many of whom would have just dropped out of school, frankly, who were working with metalworking firms there. And all of a sudden, as they work and go to school, they see that their math is important. They have to fill out a form, and they see their English is important. School takes on a new meaning. It is extremely important. I visited a plant in the Milwaukee suburbs where I saw the same thing, schools and business people working together. Sears and the Chicago Tribune in Chicago have a program. This is a program, I'm pleased to say, one of the unusual programs, Madam President, that is supported by both business and labor. Everyone says it makes sense. It pulls people back to school also who've already dropped out. We're in the process of discussing a crime bill. One interesting statistic we shouldn't forget in this whole business of discussing crime. 82% of those in our prisons today are high school dropouts. If we want a really strong anti-crime bill, let's build our schools. And this is a chance to do it. Let me tell you just about a few people here in the balance of the time I have left. This picture here is Willie Carson, who's 19 years old. 2 years ago, as a student at Dunbar Vocational High School in Chicago, Willie was uncertain about his future. Today, he's an apprentice machinist with a steady paycheck, interesting work, and a future that could equip him with a $30,000 a year job as a journeyman machinist. Gwen Mingo has been out of school for 20 years before she found her way back to a School to Work program based at Kennedy King College in Chicago. Partners in the program such as Eastman Kodak, 3M, and DuPont have donated state-of-the-art equipment the students use in their classroom training. Gwen says that the program was a turning point for her. Now she's well on the way to a much better future. Nevi Edwards looks proud in this picture, and I'll tell you why she's proud. She earned the GED certificate she's holding here through Chicago's Jobs for Youth program and other successful School to Work program. 3 years ago, Nevi had dropped out of high school in her senior year. Now she's on the way. She has a travel information specialist job with advanced telemarketing, private firm that handles the information hotlines for the Regional Transit Authority in the Chicago area. Steve McDonald is a high school senior, and now he has a career plan for his life. He wants to be a master tool and die maker. 2 years ago, the odds were heavily against Steve reaching a goal like that. Today, the odds are excellent. Steve's success is proof that School to Work programs change lives. When students are given the opportunity to prove themselves, when they're given the chance to see, feel, and experience the world of work and what it means for their future. Most of these young people respond and respond eagerly. School people tell me if you can get a student interested in one subject, you can grab them, and I see I'm getting the signal for time. Madam President, I'm pleased that we're working on this. This afternoon we'll have the conference report and pass a step forward for this country.
The senator from Michigan is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the chair. Madam President, today we honor the National Drug Abuse Resistant Education Program. It has been designated as DARE Day. DARE is an innovative and successful approach to drug abuse prevention. It recognizes that drug abuse prevention must be a cooperative effort between parents, educators, and law enforcement, and that education must begin early. The core curriculum of DARE focuses on 5th and 6th grade students in order to prepare these students for entry into junior high and high school. Uniformed police officers visit classrooms and tell the kids the cold, hard facts about drugs. Together, the students and officers develop ways of resisting peer pressure to try drugs and instead find alternatives to drug use. In other words, DARE doesn't just teach kids to say no to drugs, it provides them with the tools and the skills that are necessary to say no to drugs. During the 1993-94 school year, over 100,000 5th and 6th graders in Michigan have received DARE classes. The number of students participating has grown every year since 1988, the year when pilot programs were developed and implemented in selected school districts around my state of Michigan. Similar success stories can be found in every state where DARE is active. And a word of thanks and congratulations is due to the dedicated teachers and specially trained law enforcement personnel who have made DARE as effective as it is. DARE changes kids' attitudes about drugs. It improves interpersonal relationships at schools. It decreases vandalism. It creates a special bond between that law enforcement officer and young people, and it has even been found to improve grades. I visited DARE classes and attended DARE graduation ceremonies around the state of Michigan, in Warren, in Port Huron, in Algonac, Flint, Grand Rapids, and in other communities. I've spoken with students, teachers, and police officers involved. The teachers tell me that when their students hear about drugs from a uniformed police officers, that the kids really listen. More important, the kids tell me that DARE has really changed the way they think and feel about drugs. They tell me that when someone offers them drugs, they know how to say no, and they know why they must say no. DARE is an essential component of a comprehensive effort to keep drugs off our streets and away from our children. If we can teach our children to resist drugs, then we all have a fighting chance. And that is why it is so important that federal funding continue to be available for DARE programs. I hope all of our colleagues will join me in supporting these very necessary drug abuse resistant education programs. I thank the chair and I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The senator from Massachusetts has approximately 4 minutes remaining. Who yields time for the senator from Massachusetts? Senator from New Hampshire?
I ask unanimous consent to speak for 5 minutes under the 10 to 10:30 slot and that it not be taken from Senator Kennedy's time.
Is there objection?
Madam President, reserving the right to object.
There is objection.
I'd like to inquire as to who is handling the allocation on behalf of Senator Kennedy.
The chair would inquire who is yielding time for the senator from Massachusetts.
I understand, Madam President. I withdraw my question. I understand that I do. So I will do so at some point. I think there are 4 minutes left.
There is 3 minutes left, and when that time
outside
expires...
Outside of my question.
There are 4 minutes left, Senator.
Madam President, I do not, if the senator from Oregon wishes to speak under Senator Kennedy's time, I'll withdraw my request and allow the senator to proceed, and I'll speak after him.
I thank the senator from New Hampshire, but I'm not in that big a hurry. I'll be happy to listen to 5 minutes from the senator from New Hampshire.
I thank the senator.
The senator from New Hampshire is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam President, I rise today to express my firm opposition to the administration's current policy on Bosnia. I've refrained from openly criticizing the President on his handling of the issue previously, but with yesterday's escalation of the U.S. military involvement, as stated in the President's press conference, I can no longer remain silent. It is time for the American people, and certainly this body, to be heard on this issue. I was reminded of the McNamara charts and pointers as I watched the press conference yesterday, thinking back to the days of the Vietnam War. The administration is pursuing a policy of gradualism in Bosnia that is a certain recipe for disaster. We have no strategic interest, no military interest, no economic interest in the centuries-old civil war. Yet, for unknown and frankly